Opposition protests have erupted in India as the new parliament convenes for its first session since the general election. Contentious debates are in store, with lawmakers vowing to press the government on several fronts, including a recent scandal on admission testing for college and government teaching jobs. The Prime Minister has appealed for, quote, consensus.
सदन में सामान्य मानवी की अपेक्षा रहती है डिबेट की, विजिलेंस की। लोगों को अपेक्षा नहीं है कि नखरे होते रहे, ड्रामा होते रहे, डिस्टर्बेंस होता रहे। लोग सब्सटेंस चाहते हैं, स्लोगन नहीं चाहते हैं। देश को एक अच्छे विपक्ष की आवश्यकता है, जिम्मेवार विपक्ष की आवश्यकता है।
Mr. Modi's supporters cheered as he took his oath as a member of parliament, while opposition leaders, including Rahul Gandhi, waved the constitution in protest. The first parliamentary session will run until the 3rd of July. It is expected to provide a preview of Mr. Modi's plans for his third term, following an election setback that forced him into a coalition government for the first time in a decade. And for more, Neha Poonia joins us live from New Delhi. Neha, the opposition seizing this opportunity to challenge Mr. Modi's government, specifically over the government-run testing scandal. What kind of pressure is Mr. Modi at in this first parliamentary session?
Well, this is going to be a session of many firsts. Not only is Mr. Modi having to rely on his coalition allies to stay in power and prove that he has majority on the floor of the House, but he's also facing a much more emboldened opposition, attack. We've seen on Monday and also on Tuesday, the newly elected members of parliament will be sworn in. It's expected to be 2 days of routine procedural stuff, but yet we've already seen some dramatic scenes playing out in parliament. A curtain raiser, perhaps, for what will happen for the rest of this week and next, as well as in July when Parliament will reconvene again for the monsoon session. And Prime Minister Modi was being sworn in as a member of parliament. Like you said, you have the opposition benches and the leader sitting there, led by Rahul Gandhi, holding up copies of India's constitution. They held a similar protest outside parliament before proceedings began on Monday morning. They're accusing the government of breaking with a constitutional convention by picking its own leader as the interim speaker. They say that a leader from the opposition ranks qualifies for that role instead, given that he has won the most number of terms to the lower house of parliament. Now, the government has defended itself, saying that it picked a leader from its own ranks because that leader had won uninterrupted terms to parliament. But this is not the only issue that the opposition is targeting Mr. Modi on. We saw the Education Minister, Narendra being sworn in, and he was met with jeers and slogans from the opposition benches as well. We've seen protests across the country after several qualifying exams for higher education came under the scanner. Some were postponed. Some have faced questions of mass irregularities following the leaks of question papers and, concerns over how students were marked. Many students are demanding that Narendra be sacked. Now, the government has ordered a probe. It says it's looking at bringing in reforms, but the opposition says that's not enough, and they're going to keep raising the voice of India's students in parliament, and they're accusing Mr. Modi of not expressing sympathy or even addressing that issue in his first speech, and that was made outside parliament before proceedings began.
And apart from this immediate challenge of these qualifying tests showing some irregularities, as you mentioned, there's the greater challenge of a coalition government and, in your words, an emboldened opposition. What kind of a third run will Mr. Modi be facing this time he's in office?
Well, it's interesting, the speech that Mr. Modi gave outside Parliament, where he called for consensus, where he called for debate and not disturbances, where he called for substance and not ruckus. Interestingly, putting the ball in the opposition's court, asking them to behave responsibly in the House. But, we've not seen scenes like these in the last decade or so, when Mr. Modi's government had come to power with a complete majority mandates. This time around, the opposition, led by the Congress party, has put forth its best performances. They've really bolstered, their numbers inside Parliament as well, which means the government will not be able to push through legislations like it has in the last 2 terms. The opposition has indicated it's going to raise a whole bunch of issues, not just the question of the qualifying exams and the alleged irregularities that have come to light, but also issues of heatwave deaths, of a terror attack in Kashmir, as well as, what they're accusing Mr. Modi of doing, which is repeatedly targeting India's constitutional values, and, of course, a crackdown on opposition leaders as well.
Our thanks to Neha Poonia reporting live to us there from New Delhi.